Here are 20 things I wish I knew before setting up my first saltwater aquarium. Number 1, clownfish can live for decades. No joke. I thought they would be like goldfish. I mean, that shows you how little I knew about saltwater aquariums. But in captivity, some clownfish, I've been to some local fish stores where their clownfish are over 20 years old. That's crazy. So when you go out and you get a dog or a cat, you know you have a 15-year commitment. The same is true when you pick up a clownfish, except they might live even longer. Number 2, there are saltwater aquariums that are easy to set up, and there are saltwater aquariums that are insanely complicated. What I find really annoying looking back is in this hobby, we tend to put everything together and say saltwater aquariums are really easy or saltwater aquariums are really hard, but that's just nonsensical. It's like saying the piano is really easy or the piano is really hard. If you're just going to play chopsticks, then the piano is pretty easy, but if you want to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, that's going to be really complicated. The same is true for saltwater aquariums. There are easy saltwater aquariums and there are complicated saltwater aquariums. So don't confuse the two. Know which one you're looking for, and that will just make your life so much better in this hobby. Number 3, corals and anemones can live forever. I mean, I'm not joking about that. We know of corals and anemones that are hundreds, maybe even a couple thousand years old. As far as we know, because of how they reproduce, because of how they grow, they don't have an aging mechanism like us human beings do. You can tell an infant versus a 90-year-old person because we age. Corals and anemones don't necessarily have that. Now, it's true they are an indicator species, meaning if something's going wrong with the earth, meaning something's going wrong in their environment, just think about all the bleaching events that have been happening with global warming, then they are going to be one of the first to show up because they're super sensitive. But knowing that you're picking up an animal, whether a coral or an anemone, that can live for hundreds or thousands of years, I think that's a really important thing to know. You're not just picking up something that you can have for a year and then get rid of. You're picking up an animal that can live for your lifetime, for your children, for your grandchildren's lifetime. And I think you should know the responsibility that goes along with that. Number 4, most beginners quit before the end of year 1. I didn't realize that, but over a decade in this hobby now, it's patently clear that that's true and why that's true. The thing about starting a saltwater aquarium is it's complicated. It's just like any hobby out there. There is a ton to learn, and there are going to be a lot of mistakes made along the way. I think, unfortunately, a lot of beginners get into the hobby thinking it's a goldfish tank, or you can plop a betta in some sort of bowl. And let me be clear, goldfish and betta fish need quite a bit more than just a bowl, but that's just been our popular understanding for years. I mean, I remember going to the fair when I was little and throwing a little ball or throwing a ring and then winning a goldfish, you know? That's not great, but that is our understanding as a culture. We need to shift that understanding to something a little bit more realistic, that these are pets, beloved pets like our dogs and our cats, and they deserve that much respect and that much care, which means we need to give them the right environment, the right nutrition, the right attention. So when I say beginners quit after year 1, they quit not because it's too difficult, but because they thought they were getting a goldfish in a bag and that was all they had to do. Us as hobbyists, we need to help beginners and help them succeed by also being a little bit honest with them. Number 5, saltwater hobbyists can have strong opinions. This is true with anything, of course, but it's especially true amongst saltwater hobbyists. I have been moderating my own YouTube channels, my own website for many years now, and have a very large profanity filter on it because there are a lot of people out there who are not so nice and will say some really awful things. And for example, on my channels, I just don't let that fly. If you're not going to be respectful to me, if you're not going to be respectful to anybody else in the hobby, then I'm not going to give you a voice. I think that's important to know when you're starting out in the hobby, that not everybody is nice. There are plenty of nice people out there, and I would say the vast majority of other hobbyists are going to be there, and they're going to help you. But be aware, there are some not so nice people, so do your best to block them out. Number 6, you're going to spend more money than you think. There is, of course, initial outlays of cost. All the gear you need to get, the water, the salt, the lights, the pumps, all of that, right? Then there are, of course, your ongoing costs, but oftentimes we overlook the fact that we are going to fall in love with this hobby, and that means we're going to want more fish and more coral, and we're going to want more expensive fish and brightly colored, more expensive coral. So I learned advice years ago that I think applies here. When you're going out and you're going on some big vacation, what you need to do is you need to lay out all your clothes and you need to lay out all your cash. Then you look at your clothes, you get rid of half of them, you look at your cash, and you double it. That has been really good advice for me while traveling, and also really good advice in this hobby. Just have a realistic sense that it's probably going to cost more than you think. Number 7, if you don't use a quarantine tank to quarantine everything, your fish, your snails, your corals, your anemones, everything, you will eventually have ick in your tank. Some people can get away for years and they think they've hit some sort of jackpot, but really all they've done is they've gotten lucky. The only way to avoid ick in your tank is through a quarantine process. Now, most beginners, most hobbyists in general don't do this, but if you want to be sure that your tank is always free from ick, you're going to have to set up a quarantine regimen. Number 8, you're going to make mistakes. You're just going to make mistakes. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're going to screw things up, and that's okay. What's not okay is when you make a mistake and you say, "This is stupid, I'm done, boom, quit." No, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. We're all making mistakes in this hobby. Even experts make mistakes in this hobby. I have made so many mistakes in the hobby, and that's okay. Just remember this, when you make a mistake, learn from that mistake, and you're gonna become a better hobbyist. Don't make a mistake and then just quit, because then what's been gained? You're gonna make mistakes. Mistakes are totally okay, and mistakes are what will make you a better hobbyist. Number 9, bad things are going to happen inside your aquarium. No matter how perfect you are at this hobby, no matter how much quarantine you do beforehand, things are going to go wrong. Yes, even big, huge, expert tanks have things go wrong. It can be illness that you don't know how it got there. It can be algae outbreaks. It can be some sort of nutrient imbalance. But knowing that, I think, will help you in the long run because, number 1, you're not alone. And number 2, knowing that mistakes will happen will keep you vigilant so that you can correct them when they do. The 10th thing I wish I knew before starting out my first saltwater aquarium is if you go on any sort of lengthy vacation, let's say a week or longer, you are going to need somebody to come in and check on your tanks. Yes, you can automate a lot of the process. You can buy a Neptune Apex, you can buy automatic feeders, auto top-off units, leak detectors. You can do all of that, and for a decent amount of time, your tank can run really smoothly. But things can go wrong. Just for example, I was gone on a cruise a few weeks ago, and my son said, "Hey, your tank's making a loud noise. What's going on?" The auto top-off unit just crapped out. Right? You know, if somebody wasn't coming to take a look at my tank, it could have spelled absolute disaster. So if you're going on a longer vacation, you will need somebody to come and look in on your tanks for you. Number 11, tinkering is bad. If you are a tinkerer, like I'm a tinkerer, don't be a tinkerer in this hobby. You need to let things settle. You need to let things just kind of have a natural landing place. Tinkering constantly, whether that's tinkering with how much your water changes, what kind of water you're doing, different levels of pump settings. I mean, who knows what it is. I was always tinkering when I was a beginner, adjusting how much GFO I put in, changing the pump to this location, changing the flow rate. My corals hated me because what they wanted was consistency. So tinkering is a great thing, just not in this hobby. Number 12, a 15-gallon tank will probably take you an hour to an hour and a half of maintenance each week, but a 100-gallon tank will take you 5 hours. I think it's really important to know that if you want a big system, you're going to have to put in big time hours. A small desktop tank to do a water change is very quick, very easy. But if you have a big system, everything takes longer. You have more water volume, you have more glass area, you have more animals. When things go wrong, they go wrong on a much bigger scale. So just be aware that a bigger tank will take a significantly longer time for maintenance each week. Number 13, it's really easy to over clean your water. Now, I'm a bit of a neat freak. I like things organized, I like things clean, and that carried over when I started in this hobby to my tank. Now, that was a decade ago when we thought zero nitrates and zero phosphates were in fact a good thing. Let me tell you, just in case you were unaware, it is not a good thing. Corals absolutely need some level of organic nutrients, nitrates and phosphates, in the water to incorporate into their body. And overcleaning is really easy. Letting things stay at the appropriate level of dirtiness is hard. Overcleaning just involves overfiltering. You can filter by changing your filter socks a lot, by adding all sorts of other filtration methods, by adding GFOs. It's easy to get to zero nitrates and phosphates. It's also really easy to get to exorbitantly high nitrates and phosphates by overfeeding and not filtering enough. But keeping in that really nice range is challenging because that means you have to constantly test your water and have good tank hygiene practices. So just know it's really easy to make your tank a little bit too clean. Number 14, a reefer is a saltwater hobbyist. There's no other connotation for it when it comes to this hobby. If you're a reefer, that means you have a reef tank, typically fish and some sort of corals. So we call that person a reefer. Number 15, an all-in-one tank does not come with everything. Really annoying, super frustrating. When you buy an all-in-one something as a beginner, you expect to get all of that thing. But in the saltwater aquarium hobby, an all-in-one tank just means that you have a rear filtration chamber. Like this tank here. You have your display tank here, and then the very back portion of it is a filtration chamber. Now, some all-in-one tanks may come with a lot of gear. For example, our HelloReef tank would be a truly all-in-one tank that comes with all the gear you're going to need. But you can also get an all-in-one tank that just comes with a tank. All-in-one does not mean you get everything, it just means it has a rear filtration chamber. Beginner tip number 16 that I wish I knew before I started: just buy an RODI filter. Yes, it may seem like a lot of money up front, but you can get a simple RO filter from a company like Aquariums for I think $120, or you can get a pretty fancy one from Bulk Reef Supply for $300, or just split the difference, $200 RODI filter. It is going to save you so much money, not only in your first year, but in every year after that, and you can just make filtered water at home. You never have to go to the local fish store and lug heavy buckets. You never have to go to the grocery store to get 5-gallon containers of RO water. You can just make it at home, save yourself some money and some time. Number 17, when the power goes out, you need a plan. You can't just set up your saltwater fish tank and wait for a power outage, because then it's going to be too late. The number one killer of livestock during a power outage is not the water being too cold or too hot. It's a lack of oxygen, because oxygen enters a tank through the surface. And if you have a totally still surface, there is no gas exchange. Carbon dioxide doesn't escape and oxygen doesn't enter. So the easiest thing you can do during a power outage is get a battery air stone, which you put into your tank. It creates bubbles, and those bubbles make the surface move, thus saving your livestock. So whatever you do, when you get a tank, you need to have a plan of what to do and have all the gear you need before a power outage happens. Number 18, if you consider yourself a patient person, this hobby will test you. And if you are an impatient person, oh my goodness, you are in for it. If you define patience as a matter of minutes, maybe hours, maybe you're patient enough to imagine, oh, days is how you measure it. No. You need to measure patience by weeks and months. Good things in this hobby can take many, many months, and bad things can happen over many, many months. You have to be patient in this hobby, and patience doesn't mean days. Patience means weeks or maybe even months at a time. Number 19, this didn't exist when I was a beginner, but if you're a true beginner, just get the HelloReef Kit. It's honestly the best out there. Obviously, I'm biased. I work for HelloReef, but there's nothing like it. I made 50 videos for HelloReef that you can only get with HelloReef Connect, which comes free when you buy the kit. It literally walks you through step by step of one really good way to set up your tank. And not only that, but you get all the gear, and it's not crappy gear. It's really high-end gear from high-end manufacturers. There's nothing else like it on the market. And yeah, if you want a bigger tank from there, guess what? You've just watched 50 videos, you've set up your first successful saltwater aquarium, you now have the basic skills you need to go wherever you want in this hobby. Number 20, this hobby is kind of strangely male dominated. I'm not really sure why that is, different strokes for different folks, but in my experience, I'd say 95% of hobbyists are men. That's not good, that's not bad, but personally speaking, I would have liked to known that because I like spending my time with guys, but I also like having my girlfriends as well. It's not important that it's mainly male dominated, but if you are a woman out there, then please come and join us in this hobby. It would be great to have a few more women reefers. Number 21, all reef tanks are saltwater tanks, but not all saltwater tanks are reef tanks. I didn't understand that, just like I didn't understand growing up that all Advil is ibuprofen, but not all ibuprofen is Advil. We have a lot of jargon in this hobby, and when you're talking about saltwater tanks, you're talking about anything. Anything that goes in saltwater. That could be fish, that could be corals, whatever it is. But if we're talking about reef tanks, a reef tank means it emulates a reef. And really we mean it has some level of corals. It doesn't have to be a lot of corals. It can be one simple coral. But if you put coral in a tank, it is both a reef tank and a saltwater aquarium. The 22nd thing I wish I knew before I set up my first tank is coral is and can be extremely expensive. Macroalgae is not. Macroalgae is gorgeous. So many people in this hobby get obsessed with coral, and I get it. Coral is amazing, it's mesmerizing, it's gorgeous, it's challenging, it's all the things you want from a hobby. But you can spend hundreds, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars if you get really high-end stuff. Macroalgae is so much easier to keep. It comes in different shapes, different colors, and it is gorgeous and fast growing. You could fill a 100-gallon tank with $10,000 worth of coral and it would look nice. You could fill that same tank with $200 worth of macroalgae and it would look just as nice and save you a whole bunch of money. What do you wish you knew before starting your first saltwater aquarium? Let us know in the comments below. Check out a new HelloReef video here, and until next time, be well and happy reefing, everybody.